Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Empowering Pre-Construction and Beyond. My name is Madeline King. I am the marketing manager for Eos Group, and I'm excited to introduce you to Eos Cortex, our flexible data analytics platform designed specifically for construction and engineering professionals who want to transform historical data into actionable insights. Today, we'll start with a brief overview of Eos Group as a pre-construction systems integrator, touch on our data analytics journey, and explain how Eos Cortex goes beyond traditional dashboards and BI visualization tools. Then we'll explore the three key use cases that our clients find most valuable: benchmarking, trend analysis, and conceptual estimating. The majority of our time will be spent demonstrating both modules of Cortex, Project History and Budget Builder, showing you how to leverage your historical data to create defensible budgets and make strategic decisions. Presenting today is Nick Papadopoulos, CEO and founder of Eos Group, and he brings over 40 years of industry experience. While Nick introduces the team, I'm going to start a very short survey. We appreciate your participation in the survey while Nick gets us started. And with that, I'll pass it to Nick.
Thanks, Maddie. Much appreciated. Maddie's been the one speaking to you so far. Here I am in the middle, and with us is also Tony Colburn, our senior consultant. Tony has led many of our Cortex implementations and has played a key role in the product design as well. Just a little background on Eos. We are a systems integrator, primarily focused on pre-construction. The company's been around for 30 plus years, estimating and benchmarking, and mainly enterprise type clients and customers. We employ estimators, various engineers, project managers in order to deliver our services and provide deep domain knowledge to our clients. We also develop software. You're going to see some of that today, which is developed in concert with our services team, who brings that domain expertise to bring packaged solutions to the market. Lots of integrations, lots of custom development as well. We have various partners that we work with, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's packaged applications and platforms, and then we develop products. Cortex is the one we're going to talk about today. We have a management system called Navigator, and we have a dedicated data team that builds knowledge bases for our clients and as well as packaged knowledge bases for the market. A little bit of background, some abstract thoughts, but I think it's important to convey to you around Cortex and the design goals. We wanted to build Cortex here in this next generation to be as flexible as possible. Flexibility, from our perspective, relates to two things: the ability to import data into the platform, really from any operational data source, estimating systems, financial systems, ERP, Excel, of course. That's the most popular data tool out there today still, as well as data lakes. Whether we're pulling data from a data lake or ultimately feeding data to a data lake, this is designed to be very flexible. It's also designed to be flexible around any type of project, and so you'll see examples in here of building projects. You'll see examples in here of non-building projects or infrastructure projects. We couldn't predict what our clients were going to throw at us and how the history needed to change and the data analytics would change based on the project types and product types and all those kinds of things. And so we built that flexibility. We wanted to give users agency. And again, another abstract term. From our perspective, agency is really empowering individuals to really become data explorers. And it's that balancing act between trying to engage in the data and figure out what's going on, but also not become a data scientist or a pure data analyst, where you need to learn R and Python and all those kinds of things that require you to really go into more of a quasi or pseudo development effort. There are people that are great at that. God bless them. Keep it going. You're going to do wonderful things. But we find that the most users aren't there and may not be there ever. And so we want to give them that ability to carve their own paths. And then finally, the personalization side of it. What we found over the last quarter century of doing this is that users have their own ways of doing things. They want a personalized experience. They don't want a rigid way to look at the information. They want the system to remember their preferences. They want it adapted to them, but simultaneously, the enterprise wants a common platform that everybody can use and share the data. And so there, again, that balancing act between standardization and personalization. So some key concepts there for us. Getting into Cortex, we want the users to be able to dive into their operational data, to be data explorers, to go in and analyze things, whether it's details or attributes or metrics or non-structured data like supporting documents. All of those things will help a user contextualize the historical information. And that's just super important for us because we feel that if you simply present, a bunch of data about your history to someone without them understanding the nature of that data, it's hard for them to understand whether it fits their worldview, whether it fits their context, whether it makes any sense for them to use it and trust it. And so as much of that as we can expose to the user to gain a level of trust with the data for us is important. Anytime you have a historical data system like this, you've got to address normalization. You've got projects that are developed in different locations at different times. They may even have different currencies, different production rates. They may be different levels of complexity. And so you need to adjust for all of those types of differences in order to get the apples to apples comparisons of attributes, elements, metrics, you name it. You're trying to get that apples to apples analysis and do that as easily as possible for the user while still giving them that agency to make things happen. We introduced a new module. So this is our third generation now of project history and benchmarking solutions. And as part of this, we've developed a predictive analytics module called Budget Builder. And it lets the user create new conceptual estimates, new cost models, new cost plans. Everyone's got different names for these things, but ultimately you're trying to shift from what historically we've done, which has been more of a descriptive analytics platform, in essence, capturing what happened in the past and using that past information to inform the user, to then creating predictions in the future of things that don't actually exist. And so this Budget Builder module leverages that historical data. It then lets you create that initial prediction. It then lets you optimize that prediction based on what you have learned and what you know and how the design has progressed. And then ultimately presenting iterations of that prediction. Oftentimes, early stage estimates have options and alternatives, and you want to create scenario A, B, and C, and present that to management or to your client and understand the differences and where things come out. So that's what we've worked on here in this next generation platform. We see data analytics as a journey. And that journey is from our perspective, a crawl, walk, run journey, a very common paradigm that you see in many cases. It tends to start in Excel. And if you haven't started your journey, by gosh, please start and start to capture data in Excel. It's a very, very common way to do it. It's an easy way to do it. And you start to model your data and you start to understand the data. And if you mature that data far enough, you want to start to share that data. You can use things like Power Query and start to create presentation data, visualization data out of Excel. But if you want to collaborate and share that with others, oftentimes we see some type of visualization tool that is used. And you can feed that visualization tool like Power BI or Tableau with Excel. You can push the Excel data into a database or a data lake or a warehouse or a lakehouse, all those kinds of things, and then render it with Power BI. But ultimately, you're using generic or general purpose tools, right? Excel is a wonderful general purpose tool, does many different things. Power BI is a wonderful general purpose tool, wonderful for visualizations. We use Power BI every day here. We build Power BI dashboards for our clients and things like that. But where Cortex differentiates is it's a purpose-built application. It's built for the construction and engineering markets, and it has been optimized for those types of workflows where Power BI has not. Now, can you pour a ton of money into Excel and make it look and feel like what a packaged application? Maybe. Can you do the same with Power BI? Maybe. But ultimately, you're now in the software business and it's tough to catch up to full-blown applications. So some of our clients take this journey, Excel to Power BI to Cortex. Others leap over Power BI and they just go straight from Excel into Cortex as their paths. But the message here is start somewhere. Excel is a great place for you to start if you haven't started already. Just briefly, there's a couple of licensing options with Cortex. We've got a 365 version, which is great for small to mid-sized businesses, and it is ideal for those folks. Project History is our enterprise solution, and even our larger clients who may have limited budgets or just want to get started with the pilot, they might start with 365 and work up to Cortex Project History. Just some news about where you might find us in the future here. We'll be at APC in San Diego in May. We'll be at AACE in Anaheim in June, and we'll be at Precon World in Irving in September. There's a discount code if you want to sign up for that. But there's our good-looking salesperson, sales engineer, Tony. And so look for him at these conferences. He tends to be at most of those. If you want more information after this, we've got information on our website, data sheets, videos. Contact us if you'd like to see more personalized demo and so forth. So that is the end of our PowerPoint. Let's jump into the actual application, because what we find is many users want to see technology in action, not a bunch of slides and conversations. So here we go. This is running up on the Microsoft Azure platform. You're seeing the project history module. This is our dashboard, if you will, that enables organizations to craft their own views of the data. You can see we've got bands of projects here, charts for, in this case, bar charts for offices, isolating Midwest projects, relationships between cost and time, to study trends, geolocation, map information, and so forth, along with other types of charts, in this case, T-line charts based on the cost per circuit mile, power generation charts based on the cost per kilowatt. And so you can create as many of these dashboards as you want. Users can create their own, they can personalize those. And so this speaks to that whole personalization type of thing. I want to just touch on what a project looks like in our system here. And so we're looking at one project now. We support the ability to have narrative, to describe a project. Sometimes the story tells you all you need to know rather than here's a bunch of data. I hope you can figure out what you need from the data. So narrative helps us contextualize the information. These attributes are the characteristics that you can create to describe your projects. I want to just bring your attention to the building parameters. You can see these are attributes that are really unique to buildings and are tied to that. In a moment, we're going to see a different kind of project with some different kinds of parameters to illustrate the flexibility of the application. But pretty much every piece of text you see on the screen in this application is configurable. And so the system is highly, highly tailored to the individual organization, rather than you signing up for a generic one-size-fits-all type of solution. Another highlight here is that the system suggests similar projects. It uses a similar type of approach that you might find in Spotify or Apple TV or iTunes or Netflix or whatever it is. It helps new users identify projects they may not be familiar with. It helps someone understand relationships of similar projects and so forth. The next tab is this breakdown of costs. You can have details at the elemental level. These details can be very wide in terms of data, lots of details. You can also create different views that allow you to see information much, much simpler. So part of the solution here is to enable the user to create the views of the information that they want, let the administrator set up the default ones, let the users come in and create their own. Again, personalization and agency here for looking at the information that you want to see based on whatever level of detail you want to have at your fingertips. The system supports multiple organizational structures, so if you prefer to see things in master format versus unit format, or you want to see things by discipline, or whatever it is that you've structured, the system allows you to support that and add to it. Custom codes of accounts, things like that. We also support non-structured data. This is a mechanism here that enables us to capture supporting documents. Again, contextualizing the historical data, important aspect of understanding the nature of this. These can be attachments here, or you can connect this to a cloud-based document storage mechanism. We use Box as a platform, and so here I can quickly find all the supporting documents that relate to this project, help me contextualize the nature of this project to determine whether or not it's a candidate for whatever I'm doing, whether it's an analysis, a benchmarking study, or supporting reference data for creating a new budget. Jumping back here then, just to kind of highlight the differences here, we mentioned this a moment ago. Now looking at a substation project, you can see that the parameters here, we no longer have things like building height and perimeter and skin area and things like that. We're looking at voltages, we're looking at structure types, we're looking at line positions and transformers and so forth. And again, find a similar 7 projects that look like this one for me. So really it's about letting the user figure out what is happening in this data, contextualizing this data, and getting comfortable with it so that they can make decisions with it. But always we end up with a question of how do I find all my data? And what we learned, having polled our users now for many years, is that, again, there is no one way to get there. We use a keyword search mechanism. And again, this whole personalization, the system remembers some of the keywords that I have used in the past. And so if I go off and look for substations, it comes back and brings in all of the substations that I've got in the system here. And so here I've actually picked up some transmission lines and substations, and that's because I probably have the keyword substation somewhere in these projects and where it finds it. I can quickly filter that out and just find the substations if I want to do something like that. Conversely, if I want to come back to my search and look for offices, it will do the same thing. Turn that off for a second here. And you can see it's got offices and medical facilities, and it's picked this up because there's a word office in the description here. So if I don't want that, I can filter that out, again, based on the market subsector type and intelligent filters here, as you can see, based on how the data is presented. Conversely, if I don't want to use this keyword search mechanism and I want a structured way to view the data, almost like an index, if you will, then a browse type of mechanism that allows you to set up whatever hierarchies you want and get to the specific section that you want. So if you just want offices and don't want to filter things out, if you just want substations and you don't want to filter things out, just go for those and get to where you need to go. So lots of flexibility in how to get to these particular projects. You saw a moment ago some lights flashing here, some images here. We have introduced this concept of outliers or indicators, and this enables the user to identify the hurdles, if you will, upon which they consider data to be outside of a comfortable range. In this particular case, we have indicators that tell us things like this project, this data point here is 59% higher than the average, where perhaps this data point here is 40% lower than the average. And so you can, as a user, inform the system, this is how I want to look at the data, inform me when it's above this hurdle, inform me even differently if it's above this other hurdle, and therefore I understand what outliers are in my data set, and I can effectively use this as a guardrail type of system in order to make sure that I'm not leveraging data that might be a bit of an anomaly or an outlier. So the indicators can really help the user understand what's happening. You can create different views here as well. So in essence, if I've got building parameters, now I can see all kinds of data about these projects: footprint, rentable area, height, number of floors, number of elevators. Just, you can go kind of crazy with this stuff if you want. But the idea here is that each user can create their own views. Each user can adjust existing views, and you can bounce back and forth across the system the way you want to see it. Built into the system is the ability to locate all the projects on maps. I won't go into that. Built in are charting capabilities. So if you want to create various charts, again, you don't have to be a chart designer to do this. You simply pick the data that you want to see. You pick the columns that you want to chart, and then you can choose what types of things you want to chart and what data points you want to chart along the way to create these presentations. With different methods of charting. Here I've got 3 different metrics that I picked up here: my height, my skin area, and my project size, in order to understand where things fit in a whisker chart, using standard deviations in this example as a way to understand outliers and discrete data points. So again, not asking the user to become a charting expert, not asking them to become a dashboard designer, but empowering them to create presentation level charts from the application itself. All right, so let's go back to this default view. Since I've got that in place, one of the things that is a challenge with these systems is that we are looking at projects that are developed in different locations and in different times. And so we built in a normalization system that allows us to apply normalization factors. And so you can use really any type of normalization, means, ENR, build your own type things that enable you to create these rate tables of factors, adjustments for productivity, complexity, whatever it is, and as well as user adjustments for escalation, contingency, and a new one I added this morning, tariffs, which is a fun one for all of us to deal with. But in applying those factors, what happens now is that the system moves us from the unnormalized or original data to normalized data, where everything is now based in Phoenix in 2025. And so it's surprising to me when we look at other benchmarking platforms that people have developed, this normalization part is oftentimes missed, and we think it's super critical to have that as a mechanism. So the ability to normalize the data here and shift it, we were at $230 a gross square foot on average. Now we're at $568, which makes a lot more sense to do that. I'm going to filter this data down a little bit. So let's bring this down to a smaller data set. So now I'd like to try to create a subset of data that I have in the system based on what parameters I'm looking for. And so we're charged with coming up with an analysis for a future 75,000 gross square foot office building. I want to pull in just the awarded projects that I've got, and these look pretty good. And so you can see my adjustments are being made here. I see this Merton appraisal at over 1,000 gross square foot adjusted. I'm going to take it and remove it from this analysis, recast the averages, and now I have a subset of data that I feel good about that I want to preserve. I'm going to go ahead and select all these and create a portfolio, 50 to 85 KSF offices are awarded. And I want to hang on to this, and I want to hang on to it using the factors for Phoenix and all that. And so what have I done here is I've created a subset of the data in the system that allows me to carve out just a chunk of it for this particular effort, that it will be preserved for future use. I may want to use this for benchmarking purposes when I compare this budget to the history. I may want to come back and add more to this. I may want this to be a dynamic portfolio to change along the way. So there's lots of reasons to create these subsets, and oftentimes you see people look at reference data and then start extracting it out and creating their own little cheat sheets and things like that. But these portfolios can do wonders for you as a targeted subset of the larger data set. These are the 7 projects that I pulled into this portfolio. Here we can study key metrics, if you will, attributes of these projects. So understanding things like rentable area, understanding things like low, average, and high site acreage, understanding things like low, average, and high concrete quantity, roof area, whatever it is that I want to study across this subset of the data, I now have that available to me very, very quickly, very easily for sanity checks, benchmarking, informing the design team that, hey, for these kinds of projects, you ought to be somewhere in this range. And if you're outside of this range, you've got something very unique there as well. This other tab here effectively creates a mini database, if you will, of pricing or production rates or whatever it is that you're studying, that allows you to look at this subset of 7 projects and thus have an idea of low, average, high, median, standard deviation, whatever stats you want to see on this stuff, in order to create this subset of the data that's important to you. And again, using your multiple organizational structures, whether it's master format, whether it's uniformat, whether it's your own proprietary structures, you have that ability to study that information across the, all the values here and all that. So I'm going to go ahead and now go back to these projects, and I'm going to select a few of these. This one, this one, this one, and this one are of interest to me. And whether I do this from here or whether I do this back from here, I'm going to go ahead and compare these projects and basically just stack them up side by side. And so here I now have a chance to review these projects and look at these attributes and understand the relationship between the metrics, who was the client, who was the consultant, how large were they, and you can see that every value that's in bold has been impacted by that factoring system. So because I applied the Phoenix 2025 factors to this particular collection of projects, you can see the financial values that have been adjusted based on that. Conversely, if I look at the elements here, you can see all of those have been adjusted, along with identifying the outliers that are here and looking at these averages and so forth. If I want to take this and look at this again through the master format lens, I can do it. If I want to chart this here, again, here's a great example of using a high-low chart with master format and understanding where the high ranges are. So I've got quite a range of prices here in general requirements. I've got quite a range of prices here in electrical. That tells me where I should spend my time. That tells me where I might help drive the costs down to a lower reasonable value. And if I want to jump in and see the details of general requirements, I can see that bigger range in the project management coordination, bigger range in the owner furnished products, a bigger range in the closeout action. So again, letting the user explore the data on their own, how they want to see it, create the presentation quality charts that make sense to them, and enabling them to really be those data explorers that you want. Throughout the system, haven't mentioned it, but we have this download button. What we learned from our users was, this is great. I want to have the data available to me. I want to search for it. I want to find it. But then I typically want to do something else with it. And we drop it into Excel as a means to enable them to take this data further. So the pretty pictures come in, the factors come in, there's all the attributes, there's all the elements. And so you've got your outliner built right in. And therefore, you've got your basically portable payload of data extracted from the system in a presentation quality format that enables the user then to take this and go do something else with it. But again, they aren't typing it all back out again and trying to reformat it and all that kind of thing. So we are big fans of Excel, and we use it extensively here in this particular application. So this will be the end of our very brief journey through the history system. What I want to do next is I'd like to use this information to move into a new theoretical budget using our budget builder module. And so I want to use these 4 projects as the basis for crafting a new budget. And I'm just going to hit this new budget button here. And this is going to be the Acme headquarters. Queue up your Looney Tunes for those that remember that stuff. 75,000 gross square feet. It picks up my location and date. It allows me to choose how I want to structure this particular budget. I want to use unit format. How deep in the unit format structure do I want to go? So in essence, sometimes in the very early stages, you want to stop at a high level. Other times you want to go down to a deeper level. You can obviously expand it later if you want, but you're not always forced to do things the same way. Again, flexibility, agency, personalization. The system remembers my settings as well as the search parameters and the views and the charts and all that kind of thing. And so as I use it, it becomes more and more personalized for my use so that it remembers what my preferences are, it remembers how I like to work, and it allows me to become much more efficient. Then in terms of generating some of the data in the budget that I'm going to create, my first option is how do I want to populate costs? And in some cases, I want the system to use the historical data to feed the budget with costs, using averages or lows or highs, maybe worst case, best case scenario, depending on which side of the table you're on, using medians. A lot of our clients prefer medians versus averages, or you don't want to populate your budget at all from the history. You just want to use the reference data and maybe kind of work through it manually, step by step, rather than having the system try to generate that for you. Conversely, early on, when you have a 3-sentence description and you've got to predict quantities, you can use the statistics or stochastics here in order to do that. In other cases where you might have some drawings that you can take some measurements, you may not want to populate any quantities at all. Again, use case upon use case, these things may change depending on the nature of the project, depending on what the user is trying to do. But ultimately, the system creates this new budget, and I'm going to turn some things off and kind of walk you through these slowly as they sort of kick on here. So what has happened here? The budget has been created using the scope from the collection of all of the reference data that I just had a moment ago. And the budget has then been populated with quantities. Again, their prediction based on the stochastics or statistics of the other projects, what I told it to do, get the averages, the unit costs, again, from those averages, and it does the math and figures out the rest. First thing I want to do is I just want to put a pretty picture up on the budget. And so I'm just going to grab it and drop it on so that I have some reference for it, nice and pretty. I've got this attributes page that has now been populated with data from those reference projects, and it has scaled the reference data to match the scaling factor of this new project, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And it has then provided you with initial predictions of what these values are going to be. And these are also linked to these elements here that then are fed by those attributes, if you want them to be, in order to create this. So how does that work? The first thing I'll show you here are the reference projects. So these are the 4 reference projects that I selected from the portfolio that I created, adjusted for Phoenix in 2025. So I have those to point to. Here are the statistics that I'm turning on. I can turn on any statistic I want, but in this case, I wanted to see what the quantity was, and I wanted to see what the average unit cost was from these projects. And here on the indicators, they tell me some things. They tell me where I have outliers in my reference data. They tell me that this unit cost was derived from this average unit cost here, and that this quantity was derived from this quantity, only it's been scaled in a linear way, right? We're just using linear scaling here from the average of just under 70,000 gross square feet up to 75,000 gross square feet. And so we've got our initial prediction of this particular budget. And now I want to start to optimize this budget. And so I'm going to keep this. I'm going to save this as R1 so that I preserve the initial prediction and start to make some optimization changes to this. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to selectively optimize these elements. So for instance, I may choose that this particular element, right, this foundations element from farmers is a better fit for this particular budget. Maybe it's based on the theoretical design, maybe it's based on the site that I see, whatever it is, but I'd like to override that average and choose this. And in doing so, it then shows me the association and recalculates everything that is affected by that change. Let's do that again. So I may take this particular one and select it, and you'll see in orange everything here that's affected by that selection process. Conversely, I may look at a particular element and say, this one really isn't a fit here for this particular project, and I'm going to exclude this from the calculation. And by excluding that from the calculation, it recasts the average, which then updates the budget based on that change. So I now have this optimization step available to me to make these changes. Or I might come through and start to make just manual overrides, right? So let's say I've got some design ahead of me and I measure it and I come out with a particular quantity. And I'm just going to make a note on that it's based on a quantity takeoff. So I want to be able to come in and make these changes directly. Or I may just want to override a particular price myself. I want to just put in, $3 for this and let that round off. Or I may want to round off my interior finishes to 1,500,000 and just say, hey, this is going to be an allowance that I'm going to carry. And I want to go ahead and lock this in. And we'll talk about locking in a minute as to why that's important. So we're illustrating to the user which was the driving variable that made the math work, whether it's forwards or backwards, and allowing you to see that that behavior here to understand how you got to where you are today. I may look at this and say this electrical price of 152, which is the average of these, I don't like any of them. The electrical is a unique thing. I know a little bit about the electrical, and what I want to do is I want to replace this particular element with the electrical from another project. And I want to use that Bannon Creek project as the mechanism for feeding this particular element. And the system gives me a little preview of what's about to happen and gives me some choices. Again, agency, flexibility. Do I want to replace the unit cost? I do. Great. Do I want to replace the quantity? I don't. I'm going to keep the quantity the way it is. And do I want to pick up any children? In this case, I'll say no. So what's about to happen is that I'm going to increase my budget by about 12% in order and add about $1.4 million by substituting a more applicable element from another project, in this case, Bannon Creek, than what I had in my reference data. So we've built a mechanism by which we can make that initial prediction using the statistical data. And there's a lot more we're going to be doing with this, with machine learning and all that kind of great stuff. But we wanted to start small and transparent and really give users a high level of comfort as to how all this automation is working so that they begin to trust this before we start to bring on some more advanced methods here. So we build up this budget the way we want, we optimize it. I'm going to now turn off a couple of things here because I want to illustrate some adjustments here. And so we have a adjustment or markup system here that's built in, and I want to establish these markups. I can make changes to them. I'm going to increase my pre-con fee to 4%. Yes, I know, good luck. It shows me all the data that's impacted by that particular change. I also may want to respond to my VP who says, I think we can sell it for just under 50, so bring it in at 49,875. And so it's going to tell me you're going to increase the budget and spread this amount of money. And so all that money then goes back into the elements in order to get there. Comes out to 665. That's a great number. I've got a range here, -5 plus 25. Early stages, I want to present a range to my client or my prospect rather than a point estimate, but I have all that available to me. Again, I have control over how these ranges work and what gets represented. And then I'll go ahead and save and close this if I want. But ultimately, what have I done is I've driven, the budget backwards from, the bottom line or forwards from the elements that I have. Here, I'll just go ahead and just run a quick comparison to illustrate that. I'll take these two versions of this, compare them, and see the differences in terms of where the unit price was, where we are now, what that difference is in terms of the spread. And then the same thing holds true for elements, differences in quantity spread. You can see what I overrode there, and differences in unit cost spread based on the two scenarios that I created. So in summary, what we have tried to accomplish here in this next generation is to give your users a friendly place to go, explore data on their own, to bounce around, to learn, to be curious about the data that you have in order to get more comfortable with it and start to really leverage it more, because you are creating gold, in our opinion, every single day. You're just not taking advantage of it. And then adding to that this budget builder module to help you respond to early opportunities. Many times our clients get this phone call from a great client of theirs, and they say, hey, I need some help. I'm going into a meeting in an hour. Can you put something together for me really quick? And you're trying to extract information from them, and you're trying to give them a reasonable answer, but not one that paints you into a corner, not one that embarrasses you, but gives you some credible answer to that question. Sometimes you get these random calls where people are just shopping numbers, and you want to respond but not put a lot of time into it. So how do you keep the cost of responding down to a reasonable value? Owners will use this methodology quite a bit based on the ideas from marketing or sales or research and development team to come up with different scenarios, so that they can quickly come up with feasibility stage estimates to make go, no go decisions, and then decide if they want to, pass through the gate and invest more money in design and engineering in order to advance the project. So lots of different use cases for different folks. I think we're right at about the right time here, Maddie. So maybe it's time for questions.
Yep, and we have a couple that Tony's going to answer live now.
Okay. Tony, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Nick. So several questions have been answered in the Q&A panel, which I think everybody has access to. So I'll quickly go through those and reiterate and see if there's any additional follow-up questions. The first one is what method is used for escalation? Is it based on historical data from means? Any index can be used. If you have a subscription to RS means or other data, it can be applied in Cortex. Other common commercial sources we see our clients implement are ENR, Mortensen. They might derive their own index data or a combination of those. So you really have quite a bit of flexibility there. Next question from Luke. Can a custom cost breakdown structure be used in lieu of master format or uniformat? Absolutely. Any cost breakdown structure can be supported. Multiple cost breakdown structures. So that could be a proprietary structure. I should note that in the Cortex 365 platform, however, there is a limitation to one structure, no more than 2 levels deep. So that is one of the limitations of Cortex 365. Another question, can you apply different escalation factors for different scopes? We do have the ability to target where factors are applied, but we know that based on our experience with especially some of our industrial clients, that can be very complex. So I guess I would encourage you to reach out and discuss with us some of your needs to see if your exact use case could be supported. Let's see, Cortex deployment options. Most of our clients have us host on our EOS Cloud platform. However, Cortex can also be deployed on premise. So those are the questions I answered during the course of the presentation, and we'll go into a couple more here that I did not answer. And the first one there is, how do I feed data into Cortex? So off-the-shelf Cortex supports the ability to import through its stored import template, and that's an Excel template. Now, you do have the ability to configure that template to your needs. So, for example, you could build multiple templates that are for different product types. So we're not asking about substation data for an office building, as an example. And that template actually has two primary sheets: a project sheet that consumes from your sources the metadata, project attributes and characteristics, maybe some high level control quantities and so forth, and another sheet that stores the detailed cost data, the item data that builds up those cost elements. We find that clients often want to create their own template and leverage perhaps some sort of data transformation, and we can support that too in the template. And so that's the primary source of getting the data in.
Tony, if I could add to that, we also have API level integration with some of the packaged estimating applications out there. And then we'll be developing a full-blown API here later this year for those that want to do this programmatically rather than through the templating system. Okay.
Okay, limit to the number of projects, attributes, elements, and so forth. In the premium product, there is not. In Cortex 365, we do put some limitations on that, and that there is actually a feature matrix on our website. You can look at that as convenient for you. We have that as the information on the last slide there that Nick showed. Next question, can I use my own coding structures? Must I conform to, okay, so we answered that. Yep, you can use any cost structure of your choice, whether that's an industry standard or your own proprietary or a mix of those. Can we access Cortex data with Power BI? So as Nick alluded to there, we are implementing the ability to have API level stage data that you can integrate with Power BI or any other downstream system. So you can do that. Yeah,
Tony, you could also get to it today directly via Power BI. There's no constraint to get to the raw data from BI or Tableau or anything else. Yeah.
And that's another great point, Nick. Also, this generation of Cortex is a pure SQL backend. So some of those familiar with the previous generation was a blended or hybrid database structure. So that would be much easier to hit directly now with SQL. Next on the release schedule, Nick, I guess I'll turn that one over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be implementing a major subsystem we call KPIs, key performance indicators, that enables the administrator to craft very robust metrics, cost estimating relationships, cost to quantity, quantity to costs, cost to hours, hours to quantity, all those kinds of things, so that you can have a much more robust buildup of those particular kinds of metrics that you want, and also use it for things like capturing program areas, capturing other elemental breakdowns, if you will, of the data that don't align with your work breakdown structure or cost breakdown structure. So it's a very flexible subsystem. It uses a built-in expression subsystem or formula subsystem to allow you to craft those things. We've got lots of clients do this on their own. We help clients do this as well, but it takes the current metrics that are available today into another level. We'll be releasing a new version of Cortex every quarter this year. We have a very robust roadmap, an aggressive roadmap. So you'll be seeing that here at the end of the second quarter. Okay.
Maddie, that looks like all of the questions so far. I don't think we've missed any.
Nope, I think you got them all. So we are going to wrap it up, and I will send out a link to this webinar if you want to share it with anybody after. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us and we will get back to you. And we appreciate you attending. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.